For a bank like Standard Chartered with a real focus on emerging markets, what do you see as the implications of climate risk and climate change?
We've got these two big buckets, transition risk and physical risk. And for banks like Standard Chartered that are involved in emerging markets, these are really acute because we know that countries like India and other countries in Southeast Asia are particularly vulnerable to climate-related weather risks. And so that's something that really needs to be watched carefully. But on the opportunity side, it's also more acute in that these countries have an ability potentially to leapfrog some of the installed capacities and infrastructure that we've done in the West. So it's a big agenda and it's a lot to take in.
And in our markets, how do you see the transition trends evolving in key sectors like oil and gas, shipping, aviation, the automobile sector?
Well, we're living through history at the moment, and particularly with the oil and gas sector, which is one that I know well. Huge write-downs among some of the big majors, huge new capital expenditure plans that are increasingly incorporating alternative energy. And so this is a sector that everybody's known about for a while, but finally the dominoes are starting to fall. What's important now is to see where those trends are going next. And certainly in automotive, we're seeing them. And then there are other sectors that are, let's say, a little bit further out. But these transitions will affect the supply chain. And it's in those second order and third order impacts that we've really got to start to look, because in many cases, that's where the impacts will show up first.
Now, of course, we are seeing viable alternatives in sectors like oil and gas, such as solar. But what about sectors where we see no viable alternatives, like cement?
So for me, this is really about thinking of the life cycle of finance. We've got certain technologies which are fully commercial, fully bankable, and really the routes to scale there are very clear. Some of the other stuff, and a lot of this kind of research that's going on within Imperial College and other universities, is really still at the lab scale, in R&D. But their equity finance is going to be necessary to pull those things forward and accelerate their commercial deployment in a way that they might not do otherwise. And so really, I think we could see that there's a whole stack of technologies along a risk-return continuum. And clearly, the way that the bank approaches those are going to have to be well targeted to where they are in commercial availability and where they really are in their level of technological risk.
So clearly, within each sector, there'll be winners and there'll be losers. How do we distinguish between those clients we back and those clients that will carry too much risk?
The world spent a lot of time thinking about green finance, or the things that really easily fit into some kind of taxonomy that says these are great things to do. Where we're going to have to go next is into a much sort of grayer area around transition finance. And these are the industries that have the potential to change, but are going to have to demonstrate that and be transparent to continue to receive support from the capital markets. So there's a couple domains there. One is, what are you today? Who are you today in terms of the carbon intensiveness of your business? But really importantly is, who can you be tomorrow? And that's about understanding and disclosing what kind of capital expenditure plans are being made in order to make that transition. And ultimately, it'll be up to the financial institutions to decide, is that rate of change sufficient to meet their policy goals?